Hi everyone, this is Lauren, your sewing buddy, and today I'm making a cute skirt inspired by this fabric. I'm using this for the waistband. It's got a cute little pinstripe to it. And then I am also using my tailor's canvas for the first time. I've had a good bit of this for a while and never played with it, so let's see what happens. First, I want to know what these fabrics are though, and I am doing a high-waisted skirt because I think that'll be really cute. So for the main body of the skirt, I have this, which I picked up at an auction along with 18 other bolts of fabric for $15. So no big loss if I'm disappointed, but let's see here. Okay, so it does burn very slowly. You can see there it's got kind of a blue flame, which to me says chemical. And then it does self-extinguish, so maybe there's some wool or something in there. But that is definitely a plasticky looking nubbin. Let's see if it's got any crumble to it at all. No, that's just hard plastic. There's really no give to it. So this is probably almost entirely polyester. Again, there might be some wool because it did self-extinguish eventually. So again, not super disappointed because I did get a lot of fabric out of that, but let's hear and see what that does. See if I have any hopes. Nope, that went straight up in flames and was kind of sticky on the pliers, so yeah, definitely polyester. Okay. But I still have two other fabrics, the lining for the waistband and then the waistband itself. So let's see if they also become hard plastic nuggets of disappointment. So this is the lining. Let's see what it does when I get it close to the heat. It just shrinks away. I can't even get it to catch on fire because it's just melting because polyester. And yeah, it does just become hard plastic. So that's your standard polyester lining. And then this is the outer fabric for the waistband. So let's see how that stacks up. It's not wanting to catch, so self-extinguishing. White gray smoke and smell of burning hair. And then the residue is, let's see, that is good and crumbly, so that is pretty much pure wool. So at least part of this is kind of awesome. And speaking of that wool fabric, that's where we're going to start with this project, because I need to make the waistband first and kind of build everything else off of that. And you can hear, again, my child in the background. So the waistband, I want to do sort of a point. I want to have points coming down off of the bottom edge, but keep the top edge straight. So it's going to be an interesting trick of putting that together with the body of the skirt. But let's see what I can do. Of course, first I want to make sure I can mark what I need and also take my measurements for my underbust and then my high hip. Because this, my measurements change pretty much daily at this point. But I'm fairly certain I've got this for today. Just gonna mark out using the same tape measure so that if it is stretched out a little bit, it's still on par. And then figuring out how many pieces I want to make this waistband is also a trick. I think I'm gonna try to do it in 3 pieces, so 1 for the front and then 2 for the back with the zipper down the center back. Which means that I want this to be about 1/4 of the overall measurement for my underbust. So making a mark there, giving 1/2 inch for seam allowance, and then measuring again here for the high hip. Same story, working out where the quarter of that measurement would be, and making a mark there, and then I need to make sure that it's actually as tall as I want it to be. I don't know what to call that measurement. But I was pretty close to what I needed, adding an inch there for seam allowance because there's top and bottom, and drawing that out in sort of a curve so that it nips the waist a little bit, and then figuring out the points that I want and how I want those to go. I think something along those lines, but then I want to make sure that it, one, meets up at a point on the outer edge, and then also that it doesn't go too high or too low anywhere. So measure that out and kind of make a nice even number for the inches there, and then measure down to the point, and again kind of even that out, and then make sure that this point is as low as that first point down, or point up rather. And yeah, that should be it for the good basic shape that I'm going for. I just need to take a second, double check that that is in fact what I want to do. Then I'm going to fold this over again so that I can cut all three pieces at once. So the front piece is cut on the fold, and then the side or the back pieces are cut on the selvage. My nice black shears out, cut through this wool nice and smooth, make sure that I don't have any mismatch on the top. That's also why I drew it down that far, because I'm tired of cutting things and then realizing, oh, the lower layer of fabric was not true. So anyway, there is that basic template. I'm actually cutting off the selvage on these because I don't want to deal with it here. Yeah, and then I can use one of the back pieces to cut the lining, but this is essentially what it looks like. Easy peasy. Then this I'm using for the interfacing. Again, this is tailor's canvas, so I'm not sure if this is actual horsehair canvas or if it's all just linen, but there is a Burned Up Banner video all about using this and ped stitching, and she has a professional tailor on to kind of explain how that goes, and it's an amazing video. I do plan to pad stitch this whole top part just to make sure that it has good shaping, and that's why, once again, I'm cutting 4 layers at once, but first I'm going to trim the length because this is a lot of bulk to deal with, and it's also kind of wrinkly. I probably should have ironed it out before I started, but you know me and irons. So yeah, now I've got that folded over, trying to get that trued up, but good luck. I'm just gonna give myself a little extra room there. I have a large amount of this, so I'm not terribly worried about waste. It is a little bit expensive though, but I don't think I'm going to be running out anytime soon. This is normally just used for lapels or the fronts of jackets or other tailored pieces that you want to have a specific shape rather than just sort of sitting flat against the body. So I want these points to kind of stick out, and I want to make sure that the skirt's not just going to be bunching up in places, which is why I'm using this. Also, I like the weight of it better than any of the other interfacing that I have left, so that is the other reason to use this bit. Okay, there's those. That's all I needed from the tailor's canvas. And I will link the Bernadette Banner video in the description. Just fold that up and put it away for now. And next I need to cut these pieces out of the lining. So, hoping that this is going to show up against the fabric. Again, this is the polyesteriest of polyester lining. And that didn't show up at all, so I'm just going to cut as it is. and this isn't quite wide enough for me to cut all 4 pieces, or all 3 pieces rather, at once. So I'm going to cut this out and then flip it vertically and cut that way. That way I'm using as little as possible, but still getting everything that I need cut out. I know I kind of flip back and forth between I don't care if I'm wasting this to I am going to use as little as possible, but it all depends on what I'm doing, how I'm feeling, and what the material itself is. And also how often am I going to use this material and how much of it do I have left. All these things I take into account when I'm figuring out how wasteful and lazy I want to be. But again, nothing gets truly wasted. You can see my scraps bin up there in the upper corner. That's where I put everything that I cut off. Even the tiny pieces can be used for stuffing on other things, so, you know, we don't waste. Especially because we don't want this polyester stuff to wind up in a landfill, because that's just more plastic. Landfill or ocean or wherever the trash would go. Just better to find another use for it, really. But there's the lining cut out, so that's everything that I need. Yeah, let's get sewing. So I mentioned pad stitching earlier. I did not review how to pad stitch before I started this bit here, so watch as I thoroughly mangle the intentions behind it, but I do remember that you kind of curve the fabric in the direction that you want it to go. So I'm kind of sticking my finger underneath here to create that curve out. However, the placement of my stitches and actually the side of the fabric that I'm sewing into are incorrect. I'm putting this against the lining. It should actually be against the outer fabric. And I should also be doing longer stitches through, because on the outer fabric you can just take sort of one layer, because the wool has a couple of layers that can be sewn through. That way your stitches are invisible but long and they give more shape. But that's enough of watching me mangle that. Again, check the description for that Bernadette Banner video. That will show you how to actually pad stitch something properly. And after watching said video, this is my progress on pad stitching. You can see it kind of pulls the bottom edge out away from the body, which is what I was going for. And this is how far along I got on that before I realized it's Wednesday. I still have to do voiceover and editing on Thursday to get a video out Friday morning. So I'm just going to baste the rest of this together, which is what I've done here. Basted it onto the outer fabric and then sewn those together, and I've sewn the lining together, and then by mashing those together, I pretty much have my top waistband completed. I'm going to leave the edges intact because I may go back one day and pad stitch all of this, but for right now I just need to do some understitching and top stitching, and then we can figure out the skirt. But so far, I mean, that's pretty much just what I envisioned. So now I've got the top edge understitched and top stitched, and it's sitting much flatter, much cuter, and I just need to figure out the skirt, which is going to sit between these 2 layers. So let's go back to that lovely blue fabric here. Again, almost entirely polyester, but I still love the color of this. It's one of my favorites. So I'm going to lay the waistband down on the top of this and see how many skirt panels do I want to do. I think I just need to do 3 again. 1 front and then 2 back. So I'm lining the fold of the fabric up with that center point, and then I'm going to trace this and widen out the gap there, because that I think will give a little bit more flow to the skirt. Let it sit a little bit more full where those up points on the skirt are. Next, I just need to trace out these points. So of course starting at the center fold, once again making sure that that fold is lined up with the center of the point, and just tracing a black pen because I could not find the marking device that I wanted to use, which was that pink fabric marker. I'm also marking on the outside of my fabric, so that was a mistake, but it doesn't really show in the final piece. I'm not that upset about it. If I wanted to, I could use more of that black trim that we saw in the historical Halloween hat making video. But yeah, for the opening, I'm just going to leave that side edge entirely open, or rather entirely flat. That should add the angle that I want. And then angle this out some and mark out seam allowance, because right now it doesn't have any. So this way, if it were on the wrong side of the fabric, I would have a stitch guide as well as my seam allowance. But since it's on the right side of the fabric, I just have extra marks that I need to try to sew so that they are covered by the other fabric. And with that figured out, I need to trace out the side seams. So what I'm going to do is take my yardstick and follow that double line there that I made all the way down, but I think I'm just going to follow the outside edge. Actually, I'm going to trace... I think I want the side edge to be wider just so that I can have a wider seam allowance there, because I want to be able to finish the seam. But because it's a bulkier fabric, I don't want to do a French seam. I think what I'm going to do is either fell seam or fold the edge under and top stitch it. Either way, we'll see what time allows. Most likely I'm going to wind up machine stitching it, but that's sometimes the way it goes. And again, I can always go back later and do it the way that I would if I had forever to do that. Just not going to be doing that today. So yeah, I'm going to use just the full width of the yardstick to mark out that seam allowance, because that's going to give me enough to play with. If I need to trim it down, I can, but if I don't, then I've got a nice flat seam allowance to work with to not have that crazy bulk of a French seam. And then the next step is to figure out the bottom curve, and I want that to start out at a right angle from the side edge, that way it doesn't have any weird dip where that seam is. And then I want another right angle on the front, and that is how you make sure that your curves are as you need them. So I'm measuring the length there and trying to match it up with the length on the front, because I know, actually that may have been a mistake, because that was the bottom of a point and the top of a point. So I'm going to measure to the bottom of this point and make sure that matches up with the length on the side. And that means I need to adjust that curve a little bit that I was drawing, and that's okay, because we can make adjustments. That's part of what sewing is about. You draw, you adjust, you get all of that figured out before you cut, hopefully, and then you wind up with your ideal garment. And next it's time to cut the skirt, which again, I sadly can't cut all four at the same time, but I can cut out this one and then sort of use that as a pattern for the next one, because there's no reason to reinvent the wheel. You can see the top edge there is not lined up, but at least it's in the way where it's visible to me, so I'm not going to make the same mistake that I've made in previous videos. I believe I did make a mistake there though in not adding a seam allowance to that top edge where I widened out the gap. That may come back to haunt me, but we'll see. In any case, there's the skirt front. You can see how it's going to line up here, and how there's a little bit of extra skirt that's going to sit in there. I think it's going to look pretty cool. I'm going to cut out the back panels and then we'll get this put together and see what that looks like. Okay, I've got my skirt panel sewn together here. You can see I went with the machine top stitch to finish it, but I actually like that look. It gives it a little bit of a denim feel to it, even though it's definitely not denim. So now I need to pin this onto the waistband and get those attached. So this is going to be a little bit tricky because I have those contrasting points. In fact, I thought for a moment that I had royally fucked up, but then I realized that it should be opposite points. However, I did actually put them with wrong sides together instead of right sides together to start with, so that was an error, but you know, these things happen and you seam rip and you learn. And after seam ripping and learning, you have the very cute front of this skirt. And then on the back, you can see what I did is I sewed each edge individually and then clipped each divot there. That way I could stretch out the fabric and attach it to the next edge. Now I just need to pin this lining down, which is going to be a headache in and of itself. So don't think I'm going to make you sit through all of that struggle either. I'm going to save you a lot of my struggles because I know I myself get uncomfortable watching people deal with things like that, because I have to hold this down and then fold this slippery material and try to make all of that stay put while keeping everything straight. And hey look, it's all pinned together, ready to be sewn. It's like magic. And the next thing I need to do is add the zipper. So this is the last invisible zipper that I have in stock. It is not an ideal color, but it's what I have on hand, and again, I'm not buying anything else until I use up what I have. So it is the length that I need though. It's a beige color, so it at least doesn't clash. If it were like a bright pink or something, I might think otherwise. And I hate that these are always stapled onto the cardboard or paperboard or whatever you want to call it. I don't see any reason for that. I'm sure there are much better ways of affixing a zipper to the packaging. Anyway, so I do need to even out that edge before I apply the zipper, but you can see it goes just a little bit below the waistband, which should be just enough length for me to actually get the skirt on and off. So let's even this edge out first, because you can see the tailor's canvas is sticking out, and then the skirt actually came out a little bit extra because I put in a seam allowance on the edge that I didn't need to. Now, using my yardstick, I'm gonna straighten out that edge as best I can, just because I want it to be a nice straight line going down. That will make it easiest to put the zipper in and do up that back seam when everything is said and done. And next, I just need to make sure that I get my zipper facing the right way so that the teeth meet in the middle and the zipper tab meets on the outside, and fold that top edge down underneath the zipper so that it doesn't stick out and scratch my back. I should have put the zipper between the outer layer and the lining. However, I didn't before I sewed the very edge of the lining, so this is how it's gonna be. And I'm okay with that for now. I can fix it later. That's one great thing about making your own clothing is you can always make adjustments later on. And here we have the zipper installed. It zips properly, as you could see if the focus would focus correctly, but you can see it's a little bit off at the top and bottom, as I always have the problem, but it works, it's functional. Could use a hook and eye at the top, but that can be later. Right now it's time to finish the back seam and the hem and show you this finished skirt. It's super cute, I'm very happy. I added buttons on the front because I thought that would be cute. Let me get the vacuum out of the way. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe if you want to see more projects, check the description for my Patreon and my Ko-fi. I upload videos to my Patreon Thursday night before the Friday morning YouTube upload, and I hope you go create beautiful things.